Remember when Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer warned that hell would be unleashed upon the Supreme Court if they didn't vote to preserve Roe v. Wade and the so-called constitutional right to abortion?
Inside the walls of this court, the Supreme Court is hearing arguments, as you know, for the first major abortion right cases since Justices Kavanaugh and Justices Gorsuch came to the bench. We know what's at stake. Over the last 3 years, women's reproductive rights have come under attack in a way we haven't seen in modern history. From Louisiana to Missouri to Texas, Republican legislatures are waging a war on women, all women. And they're taking away fundamental rights. I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price.
Well, it turns out that rhetoric might have given permission to a lot of agitators to intimidate the originalist justices on the bench. Here's what Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett testified to this week.
So I thought I would just share a little bit about how the threats have affected me and my family personally. They have required me to, or my children, to think about and see things that children should not have to see or think about. One example is when threats to my life were particularly intense a few years ago around the time of the Dobbs leak. My security detail sent me home with a bulletproof vest, and I carried it into my house, put it into my bedroom, dropped it down on a table, turned around, and my 12-year-old son was standing in the doorway of my bedroom, and he wanted to know what it was and why I had it. And I didn't know how to respond because maybe I lack imagination, but I didn't expect that performing this service was going to put me in the position of explaining to my children what a bulletproof vest was and why I had to wear one. It's also been reported in the news that roughly 6 weeks ago, I was the victim of a swatting incident. At that point, my teenage son, one of my teenage sons, opened the door to go out with friends and saw in our street, it was full of police cars, who had responded to a false report of gunshots and raised voices in my home. Many of us, me included, have received threatening anonymous deliveries designed to intimidate and harass us. Federal judges across the country, throughout the judiciary, including the Supreme Court, continue to do their jobs without fear or favor, but the threat level is really high.
Okay, so a stunning laundry list of predatory tactics taken against Amy Coney Barrett and her family, but other justices too. The leak of the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade back in May 2022 was when we really crossed the Rubicon in this country. Shortly after, a California man traveled to the Maryland home of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh with the intent to murder him, as well as attack multiple other sitting justices to preserve the national right to abortion. Authorities found a Glock 17 handgun with 2 magazines and ammunition, a tactical knife, pepper spray, zip ties, a hammer, a screwdriver, and other gear in the culprit's backpack. The activist told authorities that he was motivated specifically by the leaked opinion in Dobbs. He was also a man who identified as a woman and was contemplating how to give his life purpose when he decided to kill Kavanaugh after finding his address on the internet, according to the complaint. Remember that the radical pro-abortion group Ruth Sent Us created a website years ago to advertise the home addresses of the court's conservative justices. They organized walk-bys of their houses in Handmaid's Tale costumes, you know, the red coats. But if what Amy Coney Barrett is saying is true, that intimidation against the conservatives on the court and the liberals too, has increased dramatically, then justices may be pressured to vote a certain way on contentious cases to avoid violent backlash. If that is the case, we have a constitutional crisis on our hands. Some online are using Amy Coney Barrett's remarks to try to argue that she doesn't have the spine to deal with the heat that comes with being the supreme law of the land. They're saying that the left has successfully spooked her into voting with them, unlike the other conservative justices like Clarence Thomas and Neil Gorsuch, who have remained strong and ironclad in their originalism, jurisprudence, without fear of retribution. That's what the narrative is online, at least, that she's intellectually compromised by fear and the left is threatening her into submission. According to this chart, before Dobbs, Amy Coney Barrett voted with a conservative position in 81% of non-unanimous cases. Since then, she's been voting with the conservatives a lot less, including on major cases concerning birthright citizenship and elections. Yes, Barrett joined the Trump v. Barber majority alongside Chief Justice John Roberts, and on the outcome, Justice Brett Kavanaugh striking down Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship. She also sided with the majority in allowing states to accept ballots postmarked by Election Day for up to 5 days later. She voted to strike down Trump's emergency global tariffs, but so did Roberts, and so did Justice Neil Gorsuch. But for this recent record, critics on the right have branded Barrett a traitor, a DEI hire, and a left-winger who has doomed the country. They complain that she makes poor decisions because she's a woman and a mother of adopted children from Haiti. Some are even saying that future Republicans should fill judicial vacancies on the bench with fewer people devoted to the law and more stalwart MAGA people who vote to get concrete results, much like how we associate with liberal justices who are activists. We gotta reiterate what conservatives actually believe here, which is that the predictable, faithful rule of the written law is the goal and the foundation of our republic. We believe in judicial independence, not in justices being loyal to one party or the other. We expect them to interpret and apply as best they can the laws written by our representatives. And if this sometimes puts them at odds with the best results, that reflects on the lawmakers, not the courts, usually. Not only that, but on the merits, Barrett is an outstanding justice who strives for diligence, even temper, and meticulous detail and proper procedure, unlike her other female colleague, Ketanji Brown Jackson. And no, we don't always agree with Amy Coney Barrett or with all the court's decisions, nor for that matter do we agree with every single one of her distinguished colleagues. The only time she's shown emotion have been in intellectual, sometimes spicy debates with Ketanji Brown Jackson over questions of methodology and consistency in approach. In one majority opinion for a case this past year, Barrett questioned the reasoning in Brown Jackson's dissent, writing, "Rhetoric aside, Justice Jackson's position is difficult to pin down. We will not dwell on Justice Jackson's argument, which is at odds with more than 2 centuries worth of precedent, not to mention the Constitution itself. We observe only this. Justice Jackson decries an imperial executive while embracing an imperial judiciary." Far more often than not, Barrett has stood courageously with her colleagues in one landmark conservative victory after another. Let's just list them all here. Right from National Review, overturning Roe v. Wade amidst threats to the justices' safety that we already established, fortifying the Second Amendment, ending racial preferences, rejecting transgender ideology, protecting religious liberty, expanding space for school choice, reining in the administrative state, closing down avenues to attack secure elections, restricting nationwide injunctions by rogue district judges, swatting down lawfare that sought to jail Trump and throw him off the ballot, and blocking one after another of Joe Biden's overreaches. This term has been not that different for Amy Coney Barrett, with her joining decisions ending racially gerrymandered districts, allowing Trump to fire agency heads at will, protecting girls' sports from male transgender athletes, and defending the religious free speech of crisis pregnancy centers and counselors against gender transition. When Roberts and Kavanaugh voted with the liberals to create extra constitutional protections from Trump for the Federal Reserve, it was actually Barrett who dissented, funny enough. You can't boil Barrett down to a lib justice now that the Dobbs fallout has happened. Before the birthright citizenship decision, Barrett joined most of the Trump wins in immigration cases on the emergency docket and joined the trio of end-of-term decisions insulating Trump's temporary protected status decisions from judicial review, allowing immigration authorities to stop potential asylum applicants before they reach the border, and strengthening the power of border authorities to deny admission to criminal aliens. Both sides had serious arguments on birth tourism, but the dissenters, Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Neil Gorsuch, you could argue were not united on what the standard should be, and none of them offered a serious defense of the administration's executive order directing federal agencies to deny passports, social security numbers, and other citizenship recognition documents to the US-born children of undocumented immigrants. Amy Coney Barrett clearly laments the dystopian world in which she needs to wear a bulletproof vest to work because of the lunatics out there who think she and the conservative justices ushered in The Handmaid's Tale with Dobbs. They want her and the rest of them dead. But you cannot reduce Amy Coney Barrett's tenure down to her voting with the liberals because she's scared. She also voted with the conservative majority in Mahmoud v. Taylor in June 2025. That ruling determined that public schools must allow parents to opt their children out of reading books that involve LGBTQ+ themes. Knowing how explosive this issue is, how much violence and chaos we've seen from the transgenderism lobby these days, I'd say that was pretty dang courageous of Amy Coney Barrett. Wouldn't you? Hey, thanks so much for watching. Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments below and hit that subscribe button so we can keep the party going. I'm Caroline Downey of National Review, signing off.